Hello, welcome to today's Insta Live. It has been so long since I've done an Insta Live, but here I am today and I'm going to talk about understanding the menstrual cycle. And for those who don't know me yet, my name is Andrea. I am a fertility nurse consultant and I've been working with a lot of patients who are either trying to get pregnant naturally and also patients who are trying to conceive with fertility treatments because sometimes pregnancy doesn't come easily. So today I thought it would be important to go back to basics and tell you a bit about the hormones, the menstrual cycle, because it's actually not one cycle, it's two cycles, and how does everything work inside your body. Because let's be honest, no one has taught us exactly how it works, and sometimes they explain things in a very simplistic way. So today I wanted to tell you a bit about the menstrual cycle, how everything works, and maybe you can use this information today to improve your chances of getting pregnant, because there's actually just a few days in the menstrual cycle when you can get pregnant. So today we're going to review all of that. And if you have just joined us, make sure you stick around. If you have any questions, just drop them in comments or send them privately as well. And I will be answering all your questions about the menstrual cycle. So first things first, as so many of us are aware, women are born with all the eggs they will ever have. And there's around 1 to 2 million eggs. When we are born, we already have all these eggs in our ovaries. And what we know is that by the time we reach puberty, we have between 300 to 400,000 eggs left in our ovaries. And every month, every cycle, a few of these eggs will start developing and maturing. They're going to stop leaving their sleeping state and are going to start growing. And there is a day when this egg is going to be released from the follicle. And that's the time when it gets ready to be fertilized. And we have around 24 hours to fertilize this egg. So all of these that I'm talking about works in a cycle. And I would like to tell you that I have here an image, if you can see it. At the top, you will be able to see the eggs growing. In the middle, you can see that the egg has just been ovulated. And then after the egg is ovulated, the follicle that was surrounding the egg transforms into the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum will produce progesterone, which is very important to make sure that the uterus lining is ready to receive the fertilized egg. So everything that is happening in the ovary, so the development of the egg and the follicles and the corpus luteum, is called the ovarian cycle. So it's everything that is happening in the ovary. So here we have the follicular phase, when the follicles are growing. We have ovulation, when the egg gets out of the follicle and is ready to be fertilized. And we have the Luthiel phase. The Luthiel phase is the time when we have the corpus luteum producing progesterone. At the same time, we have the uterine cycle. So it's everything that is happening in the ovaries. So it's actually not one cycle, it's two cycles. Women have ovarian cycle and the menstrual and the uterine cycle. So what is happening in the uterine cycle? Well, we have menstruation, when you have the bleed, and we have a proliferative phase. And this corresponds to the follicular phase of the ovarian cycle, as you can see here in my image. Then you have ovulation, and after ovulation you have the secretory phase. Here is the time when the uterus lining is ready to receive the embryo. So these two cycles, the ovarian and the uterine cycle, they work in synchrony and they have to work at the same time. And it's like the perfect perfect orchestra. Everyone is playing to the same tune and things need to happen very perfectly for everything to go well. And what is regulating all these things going well is our hormones. So you can see some lines here in the middle of this image. We have 4 lines that are very important. We have estrogen. Estrogen goes up just before ovulation, which is estrogen is produced by the follicles in the ovaries. So when we have big follicles that have eggs that are almost mature, we have reached a certain estrogen level, and the message is sent to the brain saying these eggs are almost ready to be released. And the brain sends another message, which is this yellow line that you see here. It's called the LH hormone. And this hormone goes from the brain to the follicles and helps the follicles do that final phase of maturation of the egg, and also to release the egg from the follicle. So without LH, there is no ovulation. And then after, you can see this line here, the blue line that goes up towards the luteal phase. It's called progesterone, and it's a very important hormone produced by the corpus luteum, the yellow bits that you see here, which is the follicle after ovulation. It's produced by the corpus luteum to make sure that the uterus is in the right consistency, the right thickness to receive the egg. So all of these things are happening, and you might imagine that we are usually taught that everything is happening down here in our pelvic region, but the whole system actually starts in our brain. You might remember that I was talking about some of the hormones that were going from the brain to the ovaries and from the ovaries to the brain. So the whole system starts in the brain. And this might be surprising to you, but it's called the HPG axis. Hypothalamus, pituitary, gonadal axis. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple. And I'm going to explain a bit about how it works, because it might give you some insight into what might be wrong in your situation. So the hypothalamus is located in the brain and produces a hormone called gonadotropin releasing hormone. And this hormone will act in the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is also located in the brain. The pituitary gland will produce LH and FSH. These are very important hormones. FSH is called the follicle stimulating hormone, to stimulate the follicles to grow. And LH is called luteinizing hormone, which is very important to make ovulation happen. Without LH, there is no ovulation. And then we have the gonads. The gonads in women are called the ovaries, and in men are called the testes. So in women, the ovaries will produce estrogen and progesterone. And in men, the testicles produce testosterone. So we have all these hormones working together, and there is a positive feedback loop mechanism in a way that the hormones that are produced in the ovaries, so the estrogen, will affect the amount of hormones in the brain that are produced. When we have a lot of estrogen, a message is sent saying that the eggs are ready and LH starts being produced and there is ovulation. If the estrogen is low, so if there is no enough follicles or the eggs are not mature, then the message is not sent and there is no stimulation by LH and there is no ovulation. So you start understanding that things are not as easy or as simple as we initially were taught in sex education. Things are actually quite more complex. So things that could help you understand your cycle is the fact that you can't get pregnant throughout the whole cycle. We know that usually when we read online, we hear about cycles that are 28 days, but actually only a small percentage of women have cycles that are 28 days. Most women have cycles that are anything between 21 to 36 days, and this can be regular and it's absolutely normal as well. So what we know is that we can only get pregnant during 6 days of the cycle. So if we go back to this first image where you have the whole cycle, we know that we have ovulation right here in the middle. And as I said before, the egg survives up to 6 days. Up to 24 hours after ovulation. But however, the sperm survives up to 5 days. So if you have intercourse in the 5 days before ovulation, that sperm can survive inside you and be there ready for the egg to be fertilized. So the days of the month when you can get pregnant is the day of ovulation, those 12 to 24 hours after ovulation, and up to 5 days before that. And after that time, there is no chance of pregnancy in that cycle. Now, I am asked a lot of questions about identifying this time of the month, because initially we're thought that as teenagers, we think we can get pregnant very easily, and it will happen very easily, very quickly, and we're trying to avoid a pregnancy. So that's not the case. Everything that I've been talking about, all these hormones, so many things that can go wrong. So how do you identify the time of the month? There are several ways to identify the time of the month. And I would like to talk about the cervical mucus first. This is one of the oldest ways used to identify the fertile window. And what we know is that the fertile cervical mucus is a cervical mucus that is more watery. So if you touch it with your fingers, it will be stretching. And why is cervical mucus stretchy during the fertile time? It's to allow the sperm to swim a bit more easily. So sperm is able to go through the cervical mucus a bit more easily. And we know that only around 1% of all sperm will actually go from the vagina through the cervix into the uterus. So there's a lot of obstacles for sperm as well. So cervical mucus is one of the important ways to see if you are in your fertile window. You need to check it every day. And when it's stretchy, and that means that you are getting closer to your ovulation time, and it's the perfect timing for sperm to swim up the vaginal canal into the uterus. And then there's my favorite way of identifying fertile window, which is using LH hormone. And why is it my absolutely favorite way to identify the fertile window? Is because without LH, there is no ovulation. It's as simple as that. If you have LH, you have ovulation. And there's different ways that you can use to check your LH hormone. Most common tests, strict tests that you buy over the counter will tell you either a positive or a negative if you are positive for LH or negative for LH in your urine. I have a bit of a problem with those tests because women are all different, and those tests work for the majority of women. They don't work for everyone. And why do I say that? I say that because they only detect LH when it reaches a certain threshold of 40 per milliliter. Okay? And we're all different. Usually we have a baseline level of LH. As you can see, it's the yellow curve here in the middle of the screen. We have a baseline which will be different to everyone. It might be around 6, 12, 11. It will be different for everyone. You need to measure it and know your value in order to understand what it is normal for you. And then there will be a time when you have that surge, that peak. So that peak can be anything from 20 to 100. So for a woman who has, for example, a baseline of 6, she only needs 2.5 above that baseline to trigger ovulation. So she needs 6 + 6, 12 and a half to trigger ovulation. However, the common strip tests that we find over the counter will not identify it as a positive because they only identify from 40. So that is a big problem for me. The second problem I see with those strip tests is that for some women, for example, women who have PCOS usually have high levels of LH hormone. So their baseline might be above 40 all the time. And then once they reach their surge, they will never be able to differentiate if they are in the baseline or if they are in the surge, if the test always shows positive. So that for me is a big thing. That's why I collaborate with a company called MyLotus, because their test tells you exactly what your value of LH is. And it might be that mine is 6 and yours is 12 and someone else is 30. And all we know is that we need 2.5 above our baseline to trigger ovulation. And if there is an LH surge that is 2.5 above, there will be ovulation. So that is my favorite one. There is a common way to detect your fertile window that you might be aware of that so many people use. And I know that a lot of healthcare professionals still recommend it, and it's measuring your basal body temperature. Is this something that you've heard about? And then making a chart with your temperature throughout the cycle. Now, where does temperature come from when we're trying to conceive? Temperature is associated with our progesterone levels. So what we see in our chart is a baseline temperature, and then there will be a day when it will reach its lowest, and that will be just before ovulation, is called the nadir, and then it will be increasing after that. And if you are pregnant, temperature will stay high as well. So for me, this is a problem because temperature tells you if you have ovulated in the past, so your fertile window has finished, there is no chance of pregnancy in that cycle, instead of telling you that your fertile window is about to happen. So we are talking about choosing methods that tell us ahead of time that ovulation is going to happen, giving you time to have intercourse during those fertile days. When we're talking about temperature, we're talking about confirming that ovulation has happened, that the corpus luteum is in fact producing progesterone, but there is no more chance of getting pregnant in that cycle. So if you are trying to conceive, I would say, number one, get to know your body. You need to understand your body. How does your flow look like? Has it changed over the last few months? Has it changed in consistency, in color? Is it more irregular now? Make note of what your body is telling you. Your body will tell you lots of information. If your cycles are irregular, if your periods are painful, schedule a consultation with a healthcare professional. If you're trying to conceive naturally, there's those 6 days of the cycle when you can get pregnant, the day of ovulation and the 5 days before. So find a way of identifying those days. And we know that a lot of women, even women who are regular, aren't able to identify those days or pinpoint. There is some interesting research where women were using a calendar to identify those days, and then they were measuring LH in blood and they were having ultrasound scans, and the predicted times that women had, even in regular cycles, were not actually the ovulation days. So it's important to use a method that is accurate and that tells you ahead of time. So I would say combining LH monitoring in your urine with cervical mucus, just to check that the cervical mucus is watery enough to allow sperm to be mobile and to swim up the reproductive system, is important. And if you have at any point any doubts that something might be wrong, check with a healthcare professional. This is what I wanted to tell you about today, was tell you a bit about the menstrual cycle. Just to summarize, we talked about the 2 cycles, ovarian and uterine cycle. We talked about how everything starts in the brain, the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, and we talked about the very important hormones, LH, estrogen, progesterone, and FSH. And we ended with the fertile window and the different methods that we can use to identify the fertile window. Now, I wanted just to finish this Insta Live by telling you that something very cool is coming, okay? Something very cool that I've been working on for the last 6 months, and I'm still working on, but it's our Enhanced Fertility Program app. So we're developing an application that will be on your phone and will make it super easy for you to access all the information, and it's absolutely free. So in the app, you'll have access to 5 modules, understanding how your body works, where you'll have information about menstrual cycle and so much more information. You will have information about nutrition, hydration, and supplements, physical activity, habits, and then managing environmental factors. You also have 22 interventions, and these are things that really matter when you are trying to conceive. And I say that they really matter because I often find people doing a lot of changes in their lifestyle, in their health, in their environment, and it ends up being very overwhelming. And I want you to make the changes that have been evidence-based to work. So you don't need to make a lot of changes, you just change what actually needs changing in your circumstances. So I have reviewed a lot of things that people were changing, and I found 22 that actually make a difference. So I go through all that research as well. You also have support groups in the app that you can join, and you can access healthcare professionals in remote consultations as well. So I hope this is something that you are looking forward to. This is coming in November, but if you want to hear more about it, all you need to do is go through the link in bio, and I will have some more information about it, how you can get easy and early access before anyone else. So just make sure you go through the link in bio and subscribe to the Enhanced Fertility Program app. You will receive a series of 3 emails telling you all about it and giving you early access. So just make sure you do that. If you have any other questions about the menstrual cycle, or if you have any other questions about your fertile window, all you need to do is send me a DM, and I'm more than happy to answer or schedule a free consultation with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be coming Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, so I will be here quite a lot with different topics. If you have any suggestion of topics, just send me a DM as well. I'm more than happy to cover those in these Insta Lives. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.